Hey guys, welcome to another video. Arleesha here. Today we're going to be doing another watercolor comparison, and I am very excited about this one because we are going to be comparing two brands of Russian watercolors that I have never tried before. The only familiarity I have with any kind of watercolors produced in Russia are the White Nights watercolors, so I'm really excited to try out two different brands. Well, kind of two different brands. This first set, some of you may be familiar with. These are the Sonnet watercolors, and at first glance they look very similar to White Nights, and there is a reason for that we will talk about very soon. This second brand, to be honest, I'm not even sure how to refer to them because everything on the packaging is in Russian, which I do not speak nor read. And when I contacted the distributor who sent all of these paints to me, they said that these particular paints are produced in a small factory and very little is known about them, period. I was able to do a little bit of translating, which I will show you guys in a minute. And as far as the information I've been able to gather, I'm going to be referring to these as Aqua color watercolors. And we'll talk more about this kind of obscure, at least on this side of the planet, brand in just a moment. Because these pans are wrapped, I wanted to kind of show you what unwrapping them was like, and I hope that you will please forgive my dirty fingers. I actually didn't realize it when I first started filming. Believe it or not, this initial unboxing actually happened during October, so at the time I was working with a lot of ink and it was all over the place, it was everywhere, and I probably thought my hands were comparatively clean compared to what they had been looking like, so I hope that isn't too terribly distracting for this initial portion. When it comes to the differences between the initial unboxing of these two sets, I found that the second brand has smaller pans. They're still the length of a full pan, but it's also in a very sturdy, hard plastic case that I prefer to the thinner, flimsier plastic of the Sonnet watercolors. I thought it would probably be a good idea to compare the actual pans here. So the last pan that you're seeing in this lineup is actually a White Nights full pan, and we can see that Sonnet and White Nights are actually made by the same company. We'll talk more about how the Sonnet watercolors differ from White Nights in just a minute, but to get started, let's focus on the two brands that we're comparing today. Because I needed to have a way to refer to these paints, at least to complete this review, I did use the Google Translate app on my iPad, took a picture of the box, and was actually able to gather some information about these paints, at least so that I could get a better idea of what the actual text was on the box. I thought it was really interesting that the largest text at the bottom of the front actually says Petersburg Classics, so I'm curious if this is made by the same company that makes Sonnet and White Nights. I was able to take a look at the text on the back of the box to see that there is information on the specific color names, and I think that there is actually pigment information here as well as on the wrappers for the paints. Even though these paints aren't in the exact same color order, I still wanted to show you guys side-by-side swatching. When swatching both of these paints, I was actually pretty impressed with both of them initially. I did the Aqua color swatches first and the Sonnet swatches second. It was only after I had completed both sets of swatches that I could tell that there was a clear difference in vibrancy between these two paints, which I wasn't really expecting. It was pretty obvious to me at this point that the Sonnet paints were definitely more saturated and a bit more vibrant, and I was curious to see how this would play out in the painting of an actual piece. While I have been working on this video, I've actually been in contact with the company that sent them to me, and they've been so very helpful at confirming information about this mystery brand of paint, the Aqua color paints, and they've been really kind and patient answering all of my questions, and I can confirm now that the Petersburg Classics listed on the box is actually a different brand from the White Nights and Sonnet brand, so they're not made by the same company. If you guys are interested in specifically the Sonnet watercolors, because these other ones, the Aqua color ones, are not currently available to purchase online, so I feel super honored having the opportunity to try them out and share that with you guys. I will leave links down in the description to the Amazon UK site and also a listing for these paints on Amazon US. So with our swatching and initial information out of the way, we are ready to finally paint a piece. As usual with these kinds of videos, I'm going to be showing you the creation of both pieces side by side, and while we were greeted by my dirty fingers earlier in the video, for this painting portion you're going to be seeing a lot of my fuzzy head, for which I sincerely apologize. I have been trying to change up the camera angle when I record painting just so that I'm not in the frame when I'm leaning over to paint something, but for these comparison videos I try to do things straight up and down, and I'm a little bit out of practice with keeping my fluffy head out of frame. So thank you guys for your patience and your understanding, as my hair apparently can't stop from making a guest appearance in so many videos. After I had done the swatches and was starting to suspect that the aqua color paints may be less vibrant, potentially of a lesser quality than the Sonnet paints, I wanted to do the aqua color painting first so that I would kind of be going into it a bit more unbiased and it wouldn't really affect the painting process right away. And also, this is the first comparison video where I have specifically made an effort to keep the color palettes the same. Usually I don't try too hard in that specific regard because I just want to paint and tell you about my painting experience with using the two brands. And there is always, without fail, so many of you who say that you would have preferred it if I had used the same color palette, and I thought that I should do it at least once, and then it would probably be pretty useful to be able to more directly compare the watercolors. So I was kind of rebellious against this idea at first, and I wanted to just do things the way I wanted to do it, but I'm actually really glad that I made the effort to keep these colors a bit more similar because it makes the difference in quality just that much more apparent and that much clearer. So we have our aqua color painting on the left and our sonnet painting on the right. When I was working with the aqua color paints, I noticed that they felt almost a little bit gummy, a little bit like the Kuretake Ganzai Tambi paints, how it kind of feels like it has an animal byproduct in it, if that makes sense. If you've used the Kuretake paints, you may know what I mean. There's just a little bit of this, I don't know what term to use other than gumminess to the paints, and that may be a deterrent for some of you, but for me I actually really enjoyed working with them and had a lot of fun putting the piece together. I will say that the hair on both of these pieces could definitely use some improvement. I'm putting learn how to paint hair on my list of things I want to do this year in 2019. And I think this would also be a good time to talk to you guys a little bit about the differences between Sonnet Watercolors and White Nights, which is a brand that you're probably more familiar with and I have reviewed on this channel before. Now, I'm not showing White Nights paints in this video at all, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Sonnet brand. They're both made by St. Petersburg and both claim to be highly pigmented, high quality paints. Most people regard Sonnet as the student brand to White Nights being the professional brand, but I don't think that St. Petersburg refers to Sonnet Watercolors as student grade paints. I can tell you that Sonnet paints are cheaper than White Nights. This set of 24 full pans I think is only like $20 on Amazon, which is kind of amazing and a really great deal for this number of colors and this amount of paint. The primary difference in production, according to what I could see from the actual website of these paints, I was able to pull up a PDF where you can see all of the pigments used and the specific colors. First of all, the Sonnet line of watercolors only has 24 colors, so the set I have is all of the paints in the Sonnet range, so if you wanted to expand within that particular brand, you can't actually get more Sonnet colors outside of the 24 set. I think they do make smaller sets, but 24 is the largest, and from what I could see, there's a higher ratio of colors that are made with pigments that are not as light fast. So in this 24 color set, I think that 7 of them, so a quarter of them, are ranked with the lowest rating of light fast. There's a star rating of 1 to 3 stars, with 3 being the most light fast and 1 being the least light fast. So a quarter of these paints have the lowest light fast rating for whatever scale they're using, which basically just means that St. Petersburg is able to offer a less expensive set of paints by using less expensive pigments. I personally haven't done any light fastness tests on the Sonnet watercolors, but I actually think that this is a great way to create a set for a cheaper price that people can learn watercolors on, especially when you're getting started, or if you just want paints that you can use up quickly or use more heavily in a sketchbook. Because if you're painting in a sketchbook, or even if you're creating paintings that you're planning to scan and use for prints or any sort of printed material like a comic or anything like that, the Sonnet paints would still work really well for that because you're not going to be showing or hanging that original. Working with the Sonnet watercolors reminded me so much of working with White Nights paints. I can definitely see the similarities, and I can see how some of that production quality is definitely there. So if you've been really interested in White Nights paints, and especially if you're not planning to sell your original artwork, or if you're just looking for something to use in a sketchbook, these Sonnet paints are really, really great. And for the price, I'm definitely ranking them up there as like the kind of really awesome find that the Paul Rubens paints were for me. And these are even cheaper than those. Of course, another concession you're going to be making is the fact that neither of these sets come with any sort of mixing area. I would say that you could travel with either one of these, but I actually feel like the Aqua color paints are a little bit safer to travel with if you were just going to take the whole box and put it in your bag, because the plastic case that the pans are sitting in is much sturdier, and the Sonnet paints themselves, I wouldn't want to take them anywhere unless I moved them into a different palette. And because they are a standard full pan size, you could very easily put them into any sort of standard metal tin palette, which is what I'm probably going to do with them. I had a very easy time working with both of these brands of paints. I didn't notice that one brand or the other was particularly more difficult to mix colors or to get the kind of color that I wanted. And because I did the Sonnet piece second, I was able to see so much more clearly almost right away that the colors just had more depth and more saturation and more vibrance. And I didn't have any issues with the layering for either of these, which you guys know is so important to me. I need to be able to layer my paints because I do so many layers, whether it's for skin tones, and I did a lot of layering for these flowers, and both brands held up pretty well for that specific application. But it's so clear when you're looking at these that the Sonnet watercolors have a lot of vibrancy. So while I'm not able to provide a 100% true comparison for these paints because you can't actually buy the Aqua color paints online, which is a little bit of a bummer, I hope you guys have enjoyed seeing the process of these two paintings come together, and I hope that seeing them in a similar color palette is helpful for you. Again, all of the links that I can provide for the products used in this video are listed down below, and a massive, massive thank you to the company that distributes these paints for sending them to me. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. Let me know if you've tried either of these brands of watercolors down in the description, and I will see you all next time. Bye guys!